right, good evening. Sorry, let me adjust here. Good evening. I'd like to welcome everybody to tonight's Planning and Zoning Commission for the City of Peoria. Today's date is March 4th. My name is Clay Alsop. I'll be chair of this meeting. I'd like to call this meeting to order. To begin, I'd like to read an opening statement. Please bear with me for a few minutes. Planning and Zoning Commission is composed of Peoria citizens who have been appointed by the City Council to serve on the Commission as a civic responsibility without compensation. Our duty is to study and review the planning and zoning issues within the City of Peoria. The Commission holds public hearings or may conduct a study session on a topic. Decisions made by the Commission on general plan amendments, rezonings, and text amendments are forwarded as written recommendations to the City Council. The City Council will consider the recommendation of the Commission and make the final determination. The City Council may concur with the decision, modify it, overturn it, or remand it back to the Commission for further consideration. For conditional use permit applications, the Planning and Zoning Commission will act as the determining body and may approve, deny, or continue the application. Any member of the public may appeal the decision of the Commission to the City Council regarding a conditional use permit. The appeal must be submitted in writing to the Planning and Development Department within 15 days of the date of the Commission's decision. As Arizona and Peoria continue to be impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic, tonight's meeting is being conducted using measures to protect the health and safety of the public, while discussions, deliberations, and actions of the Planning and Zoning Commission remain transparent. To ensure health and safety of those attending tonight's meetings, members of the public are required to wear facial coverings and social distance while inside the City Council chambers. Members of the public who wish to watch the meeting remotely may do so by viewing a live stream broadcast on Facebook at facebook.com/City of Peoria AZ, as well as Digital Peoria channel on YouTube. The meeting is also broadcast on Cox Channel 11 and CenturyLink Channel 8509. Additionally, the posted agenda online invited citizens with comments or questions on any agenda item to submit those by 6 p.m. in advance of the meeting. If you have comments or questions following tonight's meetings, you may submit those to the Planning Department by emailing planning@peoriaaz.gov. In the interest of maintaining a fair and efficient hearing, the Commission will adhere to the following steps during tonight's meeting. Each case will be called in the order in which it appears on the agenda unless otherwise announced. Chair will open the case. City staff will then provide a brief report and recommendation. The applicant is then invited to give a presentation. Then the chair will read the submitted testimony provided by the public in advance of the meeting. After all the testimony has been taken, we will invite the applicant back up to provide any rebuttal or final statements. Finally, we'll have commission discussion and decision. That concludes our opening statement. Let's begin tonight with the roll call. Commissioners, please indicate your presence after I call your name. Commissioner Fighter.
Present.
Commissioner Grice.
Present.
Commissioner Hutchinson. Commissioner Hutchinson is not present. Commissioner Nelson.
Present.
Commissioner Schaefer.
Present.
And Commissioner Waitman.
Present.
And chair is present. This is a final call for speaker request forms. If you would like to address the commission tonight, please fill out a speaker request form. We have them available just outside the entrance to the chambers and up front of the podium. Next is the consent agenda. The consent agenda is for items that are routine in nature. And there is one item on the consent agenda, item 1C. Minutes, discussion, possible action to approve the minutes of the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting held on February 18, 2021. Commissioners, do I have a motion?
Chairman, I move we approve consent agenda as presented.
Mr. Chair, I would second that motion.
Thank you. Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. We'll proceed to our regular agenda. We have two items before us tonight. One item of unfinished business that came back from City Council, item 2R, Thunderbird West Estates PAD amendment, as well as one new item, item 3R, Peoria Regional Hospital stipulation modification. Staff, please present your report for item 2R.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. I wanted to make a few opening remarks on this case before I pass over to Cody Gleason on the staff report. So this case pertains to a 1.5 acre site that's located about 1,000 feet west of the intersection of 75th Avenue and Thunderbird. It's a vacant site. In this case, the applicant is seeking to modify the zoning to permit a drive-through restaurant. As many of you recall in the commission, this item was heard by the commission back in October, and at that evening, after a public hearing and deliberation, the commission voted to deny the case, to recommend denial to the case to the council. So ordinarily what happens after that is the case then progresses up to the city council, and they hear it and they take final action. At that time, the applicant asked for a pause in the case. They wanted to assess all the concerns and the information they heard from the commission and from the neighbors, take stock of that and see what adjustments they could be made. So in that time period, what they did was and you'll hear this from Cody in his report, is they commissioned a noise study and they introduced some operational concessions, and you'll hear about that tonight. So this item was put back on the council agenda. It was on the council agenda last month in February, I think it was on 26th, or the 16th rather. Now, the council absolutely respects the role the commission plays in these matters, and so what the council did was they wanted the commission to take another look at the case in light of the new information that was presented and in light of some of the operational concessions, really kind of take stock of everything that's been produced on the public record relative to this case. And the questions they asked is this new information, is it compelling? Does it mitigate concerns of the neighbors? Does it move the drive-through restaurant closer to that of a restaurant? As you'll see in the report from Cody, restaurants are permitted in the zoning category, drive-through restaurants are not. And that's pretty much the one distinguishing characteristics between the zoning and this PAD that you'll hear about. And so to that point, the council did vote to remand this matter back to the commission for further consideration. So I guess with that, with a starting point, I'll go ahead and direct it over to Cody.
All right, thank you. Good evening, Chairman, members of the Commission. The case you have before you tonight is Z9710A.2. As Chris referenced, it is for a PAD amendment in order to allow for a drive-through restaurant in a development parcel that currently only allows a restaurant rather than the C2 uses that are identified elsewhere. So to give you some background information, this site is about 1.63 acres. As Chris referenced, it's west of the southwest corner of 75th Avenue and Thunderbird. To the north, you have single-family residential as well as the Bash's Commercial Shopping Center, and then the remainder of this commercial shopping center to the east, a church to the west, and then single-family residential to the south. And we'll get a little bit more into the delineation between the areas to the south and east compared to the subject parcel. So as you can see here in the yellow dotted outline, this is the entirety of Thunderbird Estates West. So really kind of a first iteration of mixed use, if you want to call it that, horizontal. So the area to the south you see there is single-family residential. Immediately to the east of what's called Parcel 3 is a commercial component of the PAD. And then Parcel 3, which you can see there indicated on the screen, is another commercial parcel. However, within the PAD, it did specify O1 or office commercial use designations for Parcel 3 in comparison to Parcel 2, which referenced C2, or otherwise known as intermediate commercial use designations. So really the big distinction as it relates to the subject case is the fact that the O1 zoning district does not allow drive-through restaurants. It does allow restaurants, but not drive-through. And then the C2 use designations allow for both drive-through restaurants subject to a conditional use permit, as well as restaurants in general. I kind of went over the site context already, so I won't belabor that too much. But again, just reiterating, single-family residential to the south, the church use immediately to the west, and then the remainder of the commercial center to the east there. This gives you a little bit more context for the center itself. So as you can see, the site plan as proposed currently by the applicant is superimposed over the aerial photo there. So immediately to the east of this, you have UMB Bank, which is a drive-through bank facility that exists within the commercial center. Continuing on, you have a multi-tenant suite and then another drive-through bank. Subsequent to that, you have the KFC Taco Bell facility, which is a paired drive-through restaurant facility. The purpose of this application is those two restaurant components would be looking to split off from each other. So essentially, you would then have one drive-through restaurant at one location and another drive-through restaurant at the other location. Continuing on is another drive-through bank. This could be ironically referred to as Peoria's financial district with all the banks. And then subsequent to that, to the south, you have another drive-through restaurant. So just giving you a picture of the mix of uses within this facility. You do have two drive-through restaurants already existing within the center, as well as 3 other drive-through facilities, albeit not restaurants. So when we're looking at a zoning change like this or an amendment to an existing zoning district, really the front and foremost component that we look at is the general plan designation for the site. Because any zoning change that we're evaluating, we should be evaluating in accordance with the general plan. So in this case, you can see all of the commercial portions of Thunderbird Estates West PAD are located within the commercial land use designation. The subject site, though it references O1 zoning uses, it is, again, entirely housed within the commercial land use district. So what you typically find within the commercial land use is service or auto-oriented uses. It's not typically something where it has a heavy pedestrian focus or a heavy focus on integration with the adjacent sites. It's often the typical strip commercial that you see at arterial intersections. So the site plan that you see here on the screen, though that is the proposed layout that has been submitted with the plans to date, the question that we have in front of us is for the change in use. So subsequent to any action by Planning and Zoning Commission and City Council, this would still need to go before staff for an administrative review of the site plan itself. So what we're evaluating is that change in use and the parameters that are identified as a part of that proposed change in use. As you can see here, the proposed limitations that would be placed on the drive-through would be an extended separation from the single-family residential to the south. So the PAD currently would require a 30-foot separation between the southern property line for the subject site and any portion of the development. So it would have to be a 30-foot landscaped area according to today's standards of the PAD. What they're looking to do is modify that from 30 feet to 75 feet as a minimum. As you can see on here, the current proposal sits at 87 feet of landscape area before you get to any component of the proposed facility. But again, that minimum would be 75 feet as proposed in the PAD. They're also looking to establish maximums for the speaker box that would be in conjunction with the proposed drive-through facility. Those maximums would ensure compliance with city code standards as far as decibel levels when measured from the property line. They're also proposing a limitation to the hours of operation. Now, this is something that is different than what was proposed when it initially came before the Planning and Zoning Commission, and I'll get into how we got there in just a second, but I did want to note that that is a distinctly different limitation than what was proposed previously. In addition, they would be required to provide odor scrubbers on the hood system of the cooking facilities. The purpose of that would be to reduce any odor that's resulting from the cooking or processing of the food within the restaurant itself. Now, that is what is being proposed. What is currently allowed, as referenced, is a restaurant without a drive-through facility. So if the site were to develop currently, they would be permitted to have a restaurant on the site, again, without a drive-through, but it would not have the additional limitations that are referenced above there. So no additional separation from the single-family residential to the south, no additional noise limitations, or odor scrubber requirements for the hood systems. Just wanted to give a little bit of reference to the layout. Again, the evaluation that we're conducting is with respect to the use, but it often provides a good deal of context when you have an actual layout to evaluate and see how that plays out when meeting the requirements. So as you can see here, access would be gained from an existing access point to Thunderbird Road. That point currently exists for the UMB Bank, and it would be shared by the proposed facility. Again, the increase from 30 feet to 75 feet from the residential boundary to the south. And then there would be no signage on the southern portion of the building, and the speaker box would be oriented so that it's essentially pointed away from the southern boundary, so ensuring that the speaker box is not directed south, it's directed east or west, whatever works, just to ensure that there's nothing pointed directly south at the single-family residential. We've talked about the noise controls on the speaker box as far as maximum decibel levels, and I'll get into it in a couple slides here, but the applicant also conducted a noise study, and in their presentation they can go into greater detail of the facts of that study and what the results actually mean. In addition to the requirements that I've already referenced, they would be required to shield any lighting to ensure that there's no light trespass to the property to the south. And again, the hood systems containing those odor scrubbing devices. As required by any zoning amendment, the applicant did conduct a neighborhood meeting. In this case, they actually conducted an introductory meeting in order to gain feedback from the surrounding residents. So in that introductory meeting, they actually complied with the city's requirements as far as noticing radius and notification requirements. There were 2 citizens in attendance at that meeting, and their comments primarily focused on noise mitigation concerns hours of operation, tree species, those along the southern boundary, those sorts of proximity concerns or items. Subsequent to that neighborhood meeting, the official neighborhood meeting was held, again in accordance with city requirements for notification. There was one attendee at the official neighborhood meeting. At that neighborhood meeting, the resident identified that they were pleased to see that the applicant was attempting to make concessions to address concerns. However, that citizen attendee did identify that they would still prefer not to have the proposed change adjacent to their property. As a part of our notification requirements, notice was sent out to all property owners within 600 feet and all HOAs within 1 mile. We did place an ad in the paper and a sign was posted on site in accordance with city requirements. Prior to the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, the city did receive 3 separate letters in opposition to the case, again referencing some of those similar concerns that were identified in the introductory meeting with regard to light, noise, proximity to residential, and the increased traffic for the area. The city did receive, prior to the initial Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, the city did receive 1 email in support. That letter of support was from the commercial property owner to the northeast, so the Bashas Shopping Center, if you're familiar with the area. At the initial Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, which was held on October 15th, there were 2 speakers from the public in attendance at that meeting. Those speakers did identify they were in opposition to the proposed amendment to the PAD. Again, their concerns cited were with respect to noise, proximity, traffic concerns, very similar to what had been identified in the letters of opposition, as well as the concerns in the neighborhood meetings. At that Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, the Planning Commission voted 6-1 to recommend denial to City Council. So subsequent to that meeting, the applicant, as Chris had referenced, kind of regrouped and tried to identify what measures they could implement in order to try and address the neighborhood concerns that were heard not only through the emails but at the neighborhood meetings and the Planning Commission meeting. So with that, the applicant proposed additional limitations, one of which being an 8-foot sound wall. In the prior Planning Commission meeting, there was some discussion about having it along the landscape area south of the drive aisle. With staff's concerns for safety that would be created as a result of that corridor area, the applicant evaluated an opportunity to move it basically along the south and east perimeter of the drive-through aisle, so that it still allows visibility from the site into the landscaping area to the south that would be prior to the single-family homes, but it allows for closer placement to the speaker box in order to divert or absorb some of that sound that would be coming from the speaker box. So in addition to that, the applicant also conducted a noise study that evaluated with that sound wall, how would that impact sound, again, as measured at the southern property line with the adjacent residential, and what is the impact for that? That sound study did identify that it would keep the noise levels well below what city code requirements are. And I'll let the applicant discuss more of the technical nature of those sound study results, but basically identifying that the sound wall would aid in the mitigation of sound transmitting to the properties to the south. In addition to the sound wall and sound study, the applicant would be adding what we're terming fins to the speaker box, essentially providing some sort of cone or device that directs the sound to the adjacent car rather than allowing it to just span out from the speaker box itself. In addition to that, in order to address concerns of hours of operation and noise mitigation, specifically for later hours, the applicant has proposed a limitation on the hours of operation. So instead of a 24-hour drive-through operation, they would be changing it to where Sunday through Thursday it would be 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. Friday through Saturday, it would be 7 a.m. to 12 a.m. So changing it to where it's essentially 16 to 17-hour operational facility from what was previously proposed as a 24-hour facility. At the city council meeting, which was held on February 16th, there were 4 speakers from the public who spoke in opposition to the case. Their concerns, again, were very similar to those identified within the letters that were received by staff, as well as the concerns identified at the Planning and Zoning Commission and neighborhood meetings. At City Council, due to the new information that was provided by the applicant as far as the hours of operation, the sound wall, the noise study, City Council felt it would be best to remand the case back to Planning and Zoning Commission in order to allow full and fair evaluation of all of the modifications that had been made subsequent to the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. In addition to the modifications to the proposal, subsequent to the City Council meeting, the applicant engaged in some additional outreach. They identified that they spoke to several businesses in the surrounding area, both in the commercial center that's immediately northeast of them, as well as the remainder of Thunderbird Estates West commercial component. So here you have a list of the businesses that the applicant has identified provided support for the proposal. So just to reiterate the new information since the Planning Commission last saw this case, it is a reduction in the hours of operation from that 24-hour operation to the 16 to 17-hour window that is proposed by the applicant, providing a sound wall that is immediately adjacent to the drive-through aisle in order to, again, deflect or mitigate sound coming from the speaker box so that in the hopes that it lessens the transmission to the properties to the south. They additionally conducted a sound study by an acoustical engineer in order to provide some statistical information as far as how that proposed sound wall would impact sound transmission to the south and to the southeast. And they conducted some additional outreach. I believe the applicant also spoke to some of the adjacent single-family residential property owners. I'll allow them to speak with regard to what the results of those conversations were. As a result, staff recommends approval of case Z9710A.2 to the April 6th, 2021 City Council meeting, subject to the conditions of approval that are identified within Exhibit 1. And just a couple notes with respect to that recommendation. So the conditions of approval and the proposed PAD amendment do include the additional stipulations that have been referenced here tonight. So those additional items have already been incorporated as a part of those conditions of approval. And then with respect to which council meeting, we would request that the Planning Commission specifically identify in any recommendation that they make that it go to the April 6th City Council meeting in order to ensure that we're meeting any appropriate notification requirements. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Gleason. Appreciate that. We have a couple of questions. Commissioner Fighter.
Thank you, Mr. Gleason. Appreciate that. A couple of quick questions I have. The current zoning under the PAD allows for a restaurant, but not the drive-through, correct?
Chairman, Commissioner Fighter, that is correct.
So you had made a comment that a drive-through would still need a use permit. This modification of the PAD wouldn't require this applicant to need a use permit. In addition, it would just be changing the PAD to allow for the drive-through.
Chairman, Commissioner Fighter, that is correct. As proposed, it would only allow one drive-through restaurant within the area that's termed Parcel 3 of Thunderbird Estates West.
Okay. And then with the existing zoning, without any public process at all, they could build a restaurant there per zoning, and they could also go to a 30-foot setback as opposed to a 75-foot setback?
Chairman, Commissioner Fighter, that is correct.
And then would they be allowed a 24-hour restaurant without a drive-through?
Chairman, Commissioner Fighter, we don't have any limitations within the zoning ordinance as far as hours of operation for restaurants. So any restaurant that would be developed there would be able to be a 24-hour operation unless there are stipulations in place like this.
Okay. And then no scrubbers would be required on a 24-hour restaurant?
That is correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Fighter. Any other commissioners? If not, I'll open the meeting to the public. Oh, Commissioner Grice.
I was pushing the wrong button.
Go ahead.
Could you please clarify the restaurant in a C2 use, it's a permitted use with a CUP within 200 feet of a residential?
Chairman, Commissioner Grice, so a restaurant is permitted in both O1 and C2 without a conditional use permit. A drive-through restaurant is only permitted in C2 with a conditional use permit if it's within 200 feet of residential. So in a case like this, because it's within 200 feet of residential, it would require a conditional use permit. For drive-through facilities in a C2 zoning district that are more than 200 feet away from a residential district, then they would be permitted outright.
Commissioner Nelson.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a couple of clarifying questions. So can you clarify the February 16th meeting? I saw that some neighbors had remarked that they didn't like the 24-hour drive-through, but wasn't the change, were they made aware of the change at that meeting? The sequence of events I'm getting a little thrown by.
Chairman, Commissioner Nelson, the applicant was still debating at that time proposed change in the hours of operation. So when it went to the city council agenda, it wasn't included as a part of the stipulations. It was identified at the meeting, the change in the hours of operation. That was kind of one of the reasons that they wanted to make sure that the full evaluation occurred at Planning and Zoning Commission.
Okay, thank you. And there's no requirement that the applicant meet with the neighbors after the changes were finalized between the time that they made that decision and it coming back to us, correct?
Chairman, Commissioner Nelson, there's no requirement for additional neighborhood outreach other than the city stipulated requirements, which the applicant engaged in addition to the outreach that they conducted.
Oh, I see, okay. And then lastly, was any city staff present during the sound study, the noise study, or was this done independently with their contractor?
Chairman,
staff present?
Chairman, Commissioner Nelson, that sound study was done without city staff present. It was done by an acoustical engineer. I'm a planner, so I'm not smart enough to understand that, but I'm sure the applicant can probably explain the technical nature of that.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mr. Gleason.
Commissioners, any other comments? If not, I'll open up to the public. Is the applicant present, and would the applicant like to address the commission? Please come forward. Please state your name and address for the record.
Hello, my name is Dan Biswas. I live in Phoenix, 1205 East Meadowbrook Avenue, Phoenix, Arizona 85014. So I have a presentation here. I think we can probably skip through quite a bit of it. I don't want to take up too much of the time here. I know that a lot of the stuff that I had already done in the presentation was stuff that we had was gone over by Mr. Gleason and Director Jaquez. First thing I wanted to kind of go over here is that obviously, as you guys remember, there was quite a few concerns that were brought up regarding the safety issues, the time of use, and the intent for the zoning stipulation. So, Cody, if you could go to maybe the next. So this is the recap, basically. So based on all the mitigations, concessions, conditions of approval, staff went into the hearing with a recommendation that planning approve the request. At the hearing, there was minimal outspoken opposition. 2 people that proposed zoning modification to allow the drive-through. Neighbors that spoke at the hearing actually said they appreciated the efforts, and then commissioners were torn because of the technical aspects of the plan made sense, but didn't think that the intent of the zoning stipulation was met or addressed. So ultimately, you guys voted against it 6-1. Since then, as mentioned by staff and Director Jaquez, we've gone back and reevaluated everything that we were trying to do more of a holistic approach. So if you can go to the next slide here. The zoning stipulation, the way that we interpret it is a little bit different than I think what you guys originally had thought about. So the actual use is directly next to a bank that has a drive-through. We don't believe that the intent of the zoning stipulation for the O1 was to limit the use of a drive-through or put a drive-through in. It was more to limit the time of use and the noise that would affect the parcels to the south and the residential to the south. So we made the decision to reduce the hours, to limit the drive-through hours, and which is more in line with what the intent of the zoning stipulation was for. If you can go to the next one. So as Cody and Director Jaquez have mentioned, we've done quite a bit of stuff since then. The acoustic study was done specifically so that we could find out exactly what the noise levels were going to be based on the type of use, and we used the existing restaurant as the initial measurement. So as you can see, we did this. We hired them to assess the current conditions with the vacant site, assess the current conditions of the existing store, assess our proposed mitigations, suggest other mitigations as necessary, and provide consultation as the process progressed. We can go to the next one. So this is the new site plan that we've proposed. It's kind of hard to see. It's kind of small, but there's 3 blue lines that are going from the speaker box to the residence to the south. 2 of those lines are directly to the south, to the nearest property, and then the third one is to the east, the southeast, that runs into the residential adjacent to our property. I think it's 190 feet on A, which is the longest direction from the speaker box, and I believe it's 150 feet from the speaker box directly to the residence to the south, and I believe it's like 120 something feet from the drive-through lane to the south. As you can see, actually I can go to the next slide. So with that said, these are the cross-sections that we had done and drawn up, and with the engineers' help. So they did a scale drawing that shows the different levels of decibels as it goes from the speaker box all the way to the residential. So the first one you can see is A. That's the one that is the longest line that is diagonal from the speaker box to the residential to the southeast. As you can see, at the property boundary line, none of the decibel levels are above 30 decibels. And I know that doesn't sound like it makes much sense, but we included a scale that's in color there that you can see kind of what the decibel levels would equate to in the real world. Basically, 30 decibels is about what you would hear from a whisper. And this is only taking into consideration the distance with the sound wall that we've attenuated, or we've proposed in the plan here. Additionally, as they mentioned, staff mentioned, we have also speaker box system that reduces the volume of the speaker during ambient level, like lower ambient level volumes. So if it's quieter outside, the volume of the speaker box reduces to account for that. Additionally, we have added fins to the speaker box directly, so that what that does is it directs the noise specifically right at the car. So that reduces the volume of the noise that goes off in different directions. And so what the noise engineer has come up with is that would reduce the decibel levels listed in this exhibit here even further than what we have shown there, because they're too hard to calculate, the effects of those things until they're actually in the field measure. And these are simple calculations, and you'll see if you look closely at those that the decibel levels right at the wall are much louder, and then as they hit the wall, it drops significantly, and then it continues on dropping down and down and down until you get to roughly 30 decibels. Additionally, I think Commissioner Nelson had asked about the, whether the study was done with the staff present. And it wasn't, but the engineer has licensure, the requirements that we have to do, that they have to do this with. It's not something that they can just write a report saying whatever we want them to say. They have, due diligence and E&O insurance that requires them to be truthful in their reports. So we have that to be, we have that there to suggest that it doesn't need to be with staff present, and it's something that they need to be truthful with. I hope that answered that question. If you can go to the next slide. So with that said, the next one, these are the changes that we made, the final mitigations and concessions. You can see the trees along the south side of the property. We wanted to put bigger trees in so that we could mitigate some of the view corridor and the some sound dampening if the trees would actually help with that. Additionally, you can see that the wall along the drive-through is angled so that it'll take into consideration the houses to the south. And then, as the exhibit shows, it will directly affect the sound that's going to the south as well. Another mitigation measure that we didn't really bring up that really doesn't have anything to do with the sound or this specific zoning case was that we heard from the residents that they didn't want smell of the restaurant to be wafting over the wall. So we decided that we would move the trash enclosure further north, about 100 feet north of where we had it originally, so that would minimize any kind of smell that was coming from the property. And additionally, as the staff has mentioned, we had the hood vent scrubbers that we were planning on adding to the hood vents at a considerable cost. So with all that said, we feel like we've done above and beyond for concessions, and we've done everything that we possibly can to make sure that we work with the citizens, the neighbors, and done things that wouldn't have had to been done with a regular restaurant, but we wanted to make sure that we were good neighbors. And so that's what we did. The last thing is the the hours of operation. I mean, that's a pretty significant thing to give up when it comes to the tenants, because most of their business, you know, if you ever do work with a tenant, a national retail tenant, the hours of operation, the signage, the way that they have access to the property, those are the major things that they never want to give up if they don't have to. So this reduction in hours for the drive-through was a significant concession that they were willing to give up, just because we wanted to make sure that the residents were happy with what was going into this development. So with that said, I think that just open up to some questions.
Thank you. Do we have any questions from any commissioners? Commissioner Nelson.
Thank you for that report. Appreciate that. And the intent of my question behind asking city staff if they are present wasn't that I was questioning the validity of the engineer. You know, was things done correctly? It was merely, could he answer some questions I had regarding the noise study itself? So that was the only reason I asked that. So
Gotcha.
I apologize if that was misinterpreted. So regarding the noise study, can you tell me a little bit more about, so when you do that, are you putting vehicles through there? Are you turning stereos on these vehicles? Are you bringing a variety of vehicles with some with exhaust noise, for instance, or are you just literally monitoring what's coming out of the speaker?
A little bit of both.
Okay.
So they went to the, I'm not a noise engineer, I wasn't there when they did the study, but from what I understand, they did, they actually went to the drive-through and took measurements from all day long, and they even did the late night measurements as well, and took the ambient measures of the existing site, so that in the report it says what the ambient levels of noise was at the vacant site from Thunderbird, and so there's all that data is in there. So with that said, the calculations, when they did the calculations, it even says in the report, I have it right here actually. So it says the nearest projected noise impact. The nearest residential property line is 150 feet from the proposed speaker box. The projected noise impact at this property line based on the source noise level measurements is 39.3 decibels for a speaker box at 40 and 44.2 decibels for the engine rev. The combined noise level is 45.4 decibels at the nearest residential property line. This is approximately 20 decibels subjectively a quarter as loud below the commercial nighttime noise limit, and approximately 10 decibels subjectively half as loud below the residential nighttime limit. Additionally, this is quieter than the average ambient noise level at the 2:30 a.m. on a weekday. No additional noise attenuation measures should be necessary. However, applicant has proposed to build an 8-foot high barrier, 6-foot high CMU wall on a 2-foot high berm to further protect the residents' properties. And so those numbers that he was just saying were before we were inputting the wall. So the wall is why the decibel levels dropped down to 30. And you can see that with the noise study, or with the exhibit that I showed previously. Additionally, on the conclusions, it says, even without the proposed noise attenuation measures, an 8-foot high barrier and specialty speaker system, the potential noise level is substantially quieter than Peoria's residential nighttime noise level limit. With the 8-foot high barrier wall, the potential noise level at the nearest residential property line is 42 decibels with the speaker box, and 7 vehicles in the drive-through lane revved their engines simultaneously. So that 42 decibels is if 7 cars were revving their engines and the speaker box was going off at the same time. So they did take all of that into consideration.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying that.
Commissioner Fider.
Thank you.
I just want to make sure I understood that right, that per that sound study, that the decibel level at the property line for the residents would have been within city requirements without the wall?
Correct, yes.
So the wall is over and above?
Correct.
Okay.
And in addition to that, the fins that direct the sound is additionally above that, and then also the system that we're putting in place at a significant cost is also above and beyond.
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, I did, just for clarification, in the noise study, which is Exhibit 3, in the conclusions, it says with the 8-foot higher barrier wall, the potential noise level is 42 decibels. So that's with the 8-foot high wall there.
Correct. And it is, but that is also with the speaker box and 7 vehicles revving at the same time. So without the revving and without the speaker box, that wall, with the speaker box, but without the revving, it would be roughly 30 based on the distances that you can see on that exhibit that we put in the presentation.
Thank you.
Any other commissioners, any questions? No? Thank you, appreciate that. We have a few speaker request forms from the public. If those persons could come up to the podium as their names are read, and please limit your comments to 3 minutes, as well as when you come up to the podium, state your name and your address for the record. We'll start off with Christy James.
Hello, I'm Christy James. My address is 7658 West Rue de la Moore, Peoria, 85381. I am directly south of the proposed lot. I had a nice long little list here to go over with you, but basically I just want to talk about their points of the things that they say they are planning to change. It doesn't change my mind in any way. This noise study that they did doesn't mean anything to me. My house faces that lot. And if I have drive-through traffic going through that lot while I'm trying to get to bed so that I can go to work in the morning, even till 11 o'clock at night versus all night, that hampers my life and my husband's life. And it's whether there's a noise study or not, you all know how noisy cars are coming and going, closing doors, people with their music on. I don't know why everything was wrapped around the sound box. That wasn't my main concern. My second concern with the noise is that I have a big, beautiful yard, and that's why I picked that house. It has a big pool, and I like to enjoy my personal space. And to do that with the constant noise of a drive-through behind it all day long would be very disheartening. And to sell my property, no one would want to see that either. And their statement that there's a drive-through next door already, it's a bank drive-through. There's hardly any traffic, and it's done at 5. And it's not there on the weekends either. So to me, those don't change anything. It hasn't changed my mind in any way. And yes, it's great that they decided that they would keep it 75 feet away versus 30 feet away, but it really isn't going to make that much of a difference at all. So I am still very opposed to it, and I hope that you take that into consideration. When it was zoned that way, I believe that it was zoned that way properly, that they were thinking of those types of things, and that I hope that you keep it that way. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll have James Kramer.
Thank you for your guys' time. My name is James Kramer, and I live at 7710 West Boca Raton, which is directly across the street from where this is going in. Mr. Gleason, if possible, could I ask you to bring up the context slide from your first presentation? It was from your original presentation. Just take your time. My concern, of course, I live on the other side of where this is going in, so the noise and all that was never really hit me. I understand how it's hitting them. My concern was actually the traffic that's on Thunderbird Road. I'm sure the council has had a chance to drive down that road at one point, sometime in your life living in Peoria. I've been here for 40 years, 40 plus years. I've lived in my current house 22 years. And I have seen the traffic grow and grow as the West Valley grows, such as Surprise and Sun City West, all those areas grow. As you can see here, where they're planning on building this is right next to the UMB Bank. And of course, they were talking about the 3 drive-throughs from the 3 different banks. Well, I can tell you right now that those 3 banks together don't get enough drive-through traffic as that restaurant will in one day. I don't know how they stay open. I never see anybody in them. Right at the end of the property where they're planning on building, you can see our street. My concern is they have to use UMB's driveway to make access to this location. Even though it's not legal to do so, Everybody understands, they think a two-way left turn lane is a merge lane. So they're going to be pulling out of this restaurant into that merge lane. As soon as they do, the people trying to make a left into our neighborhood are now face to face with them in that left turn lane. And either traffic has got to clear for them to go, or you got to get enough traffic out of the way for them to merge. And I know that's zoned for a restaurant, but as you guys well know, being on the planning commission, nobody's going to put a sit-down restaurant there because it's just not a good location, especially with P83 being up the street and every restaurant you could ever want being right there. The other concern we have is, I know you guys probably like coffee and Dutch Brothers. The two busiest Dutch Brothers franchises in this state are both right there at 83rd Avenue and Thunderbird. I don't drink coffee, so I don't know if it's good. But those places never stop. So there's just constant traffic coming to and from trying to get there. So again, my concern was always the traffic, but I fully understand everybody else's concern about the noise and stuff as well. It just wouldn't affect me as much. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Kramer. Lynn Kramer?
Hello. Thank you for your time this evening. I am here this evening to state my concerns with regards to the rezoning of a lot for a fast food restaurant on Thunderbird west of 75th Ave. I'm against the permitting to rezone and amend the allowable uses for Parcel 3 to include a single drive-through restaurant. My name is Lynn Kramer, and I've been a Peoria resident for approximately 37 years. My current address is 7710 West Boca Raton Road, and I've lived there 22 years. My home is the second house on Boca Raton Road, which is the street north of Thunderbird and west of 77th Ave. You can see the subject lot from my front yard. My concerns are mainly safety matters for the following reasons. Thunderbird Road is the only access to the 101. There's no access for either Greenway or Cactus, which make this road extremely busy as it is going both ways, east and west. We call it Thunderbird Thruway. Thunderbird at 75th Ave intersection is 3 lanes going west straight with 2 turn lanes north and south, including a roadway space between the 2 turn lanes. Then Thunderbird narrows as you go east to 2 lanes just shy of my street, 77th Ave. It bottlenecks right there. This causes many accidents from cut-off speeding cars to get in front of other cars. I'm already afraid of the congestion at 77th Ave and Thunderbird entering the neighborhood. The power company has relocated an electrical box. It has been hit by cars in the past. I hear and see accidents all the time from my home on Thunderbird. Thunderbird Road traffic backs up from 79th Ave light to in front of my street, 77th Ave, all the time. This makes it impossible to turn out of or into my neighborhood to go north from Thunderbird onto 77th Ave. Now they want to add an additional approximate 2,500 cars a day to Thunderbird with the opening of a fast food drive-through restaurant. This will only make the risk much greater for accidents. The curb cut south of Thunderbird to be used to enter into the fast food driveway is only 200 feet between my street and their curb cut. So when traffic turns out of the Taco Bell to go west on Thunderbird, like my husband said, they're going to immediately use that middle turn lane and sit there and wait. Well, they're going to hit the traffic coming right in front of them that want to turn into my neighborhood and go north. So we're going to be face to face with 2 lanes that could be backed up all the way from 79th Ave, waiting for these cars to try to merge over to go west on Thunderbird. It's going to be crazy, and it's right in front of my street at 77th. Then you have the scenario, you have people coming from the west, from the intersection, that will want to go to the Taco Bell. So they're going to go ahead and get into that middle turn lane as well and want to turn left into that curb cut. So it's going to be left, right, with traffic backing right up into the traffic that's trying to turn left. There's only 200 feet there before you hit the turn lane to turn into my neighborhood. Total chaos, and it's going to cause more accidents there than there already is right there. As it stands with the current zoning, a restaurant is permitted, but the fast food with the drive-through is not, probably for a reason due to traffic. In closing, I just want to let you know my concerns regarding the safety for my friends and family and all of us who drive down Thunderbird Road. It's just going to make it more congested right in front of 77th Ave with traffic having to merge, people not paying attention, using the middle lane for the lane that they're not supposed to, traffic coming east from the 101, 2 lanes, speeding down, going 40, 50 miles an hour. The increased traffic congestion is just going to be very dangerous on this little small stretch right in that little section there. There will be an increase in traffic on Thunderbird due to the fast food drive-through restaurant. So once again, thank you for your time this evening. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Ms. Kramer. Mr. Don Ware?
Good evening. My name is Don Ware. I'm mask off. Live at 7709 West Boca Raton Road in Peoria. Before I get into my prepared thing here, I don't know if you know or not, the applicant already owns the land. I don't know if that's relevant or not, but it does seem obviously incentive for him to really pursue this. And I want to thank the city of Peoria for giving us third chance to speak on the same subject. It certainly improved my public speaking. I no longer have to imagine my audiences in their underwear. So it surprised me to be here again. I mean, apparently it's also a historical event. The city council said they can only remember one time that they didn't accept the planning commission's unanimous, almost unanimous decision to reject rezoning in this area, or reject rezoning, period. I'm going to talk about moving the wall. Initially, they had the wall back further, okay, and there still was so many feet and there was a consideration of the planning commission of what would happen behind that wall. Well, they moved it forward now, okay, made it even bigger behind there. I guess they're going to put picnic stands in there, whatever. But my point is that they've made an echo box now. And I have a computer science degree and a master's in business, but I don't have an acoustic engineering degree. But if you put something close together, a wall and another building, it's only going to make, air is a diffuser of sound. Distance tends to break sound up. By putting this right in there with having a car with its engine on and the box, it's just going to make an echo box and make it even louder. That's my opinion. All right, well. And talking about what Ms. Kramer said, that, Thunderbird Road, the speed limit's set at 40. I don't see anybody doing 40 miles an hour there. I've seen cars go past there 70, 60, 70 miles an hour. It seems the police are no longer care to monitor those roads anymore. I don't see any traffic tickets getting out for those speed limits. Also, I had proposed 2 alternatives to where the location was. One is 79th Avenue. There's an empty lot there. It has a light, has commercial properties there, gas station. It'd be perfect for it. But whatever. Also, talk about the 3 to 2 lanes conversion. That's already been spoken about. But they forgot one other thing when they were talking about the impacts. They forgot the financial impact. I'm sure am I selling my house, if I ever sell my house, I've lived here for quite a number of years, but I'm sure the potential buyers would not appreciate having a Taco Bell across the street. Well, in this case, it's now a KFC, not a Taco Bell. So I posed, the second opinion was continue, Peoria is trying to continue building in blighted areas. There's plenty of room on Grand Avenue, I would say, and the city council could probably give some concessions to having built a Taco Bell there, or, sorry again, KFC. Well, finally, I'd just like to quote the mayor's last newsletter. Continually upgrading our surroundings is a critical component of what we do, but we never forget our primary purpose. We are the people business. We exist to serve the residents of Peoria by delivering the core services needed for safe, healthy living. And from city council, my city council representative, Michael Finn, on his campaign promises. I will continue to support innovative ideas and solutions such as land banking. I didn't know what that was, I had to look that up. To ensure we are getting the right projects on key parcels of land. Land banks are designed to acquire and maintain properties and then transfer them back to responsible ownership and productive use in accordance with local land use goals and priorities, creating a more efficient and effective system and eliminating blight. And last but not least. Okay, my opinion, the study is moving a fast food restaurant in the proposed location would just make it another blighted area as property values drop and homeowners leave. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ware. Philip Cooley?
Good afternoon, Philip Cooley. I live at 7652 West Rue de la Moore, immediately south of the property. When I came here tonight, I wasn't sure what I was going to say. As a couple of gentlemen came to the house yesterday and we talked about options. I have to admit I'm more confused now than ever. Part of our concern is the houses immediately south of there are two-story houses. I know what the acoustic study said, but I also know that if you're talking about a ground level at my property versus what I hear in my bedroom window on the second floor, completely different. I'm still concerned about timing. Discussions we had yesterday said that the restaurant would close drive-through would close at 10 p.m. I'm much more comfortable with closing at 10 p.m. as that's more in line with a residential area. I have a 16-year-old son. He cannot work past 10 p.m. So why do I want a restaurant open, or a drive-through restaurant open later than that? I realize it's zoned for a 24-hour restaurant, but the difference is a 24-hour restaurant is trying to funnel people into their building, not behind their building towards our houses. Without understanding for sure what the actual stipulation is, how late this drive-through is going to be open, I can't support this. I need to know for sure what the situation is. And I'm getting two completely different answers. Very confusing to me. The proposal for the wall at the drive-through is still a concern for me. Me and my wife both believe that a 8-foot wall separating their property at any point and the block walls at our property is creating a place for people to hang out. And we don't think it would be a place where people would be doing good things, especially for restaurants open 11 midnight, as the slides have said. Again, some of the proposals that we talked about yesterday were maybe they could build up our wall to 8 foot to help with sound abatement. If those things were available and I could see what's going on, I might be able to be more in support of this situation, but I don't feel like I know exactly what's happening and I don't know what I'm for or against anymore. As I've said I'm the one that's been at every Zoom meeting. I've been at both planning and zoning meetings. I've been at city council meeting. I'm not asking to change anything. I'm asking to keep things the way they are. As our other neighbors have said, I think this was zoned away for a reason, and I'm not convinced that the change and the mitigation measures that have been proposed are still consistent with the intent of the original zoning. Thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you. It appears the rest of the speaker letters are all from the applicant. Does the applicant want to come up and make any additional comments?
Good evening. My name is John Gertis with Texas Land Engineers. So I was the one who kind of laid everything out with this and laid out the buildings and just a little history. We've probably done about 50 to 75 ground ups. We've also done about 200 something remodels with this developer. He does own the land outright. The existing drive aisle there is an existing drive aisle that's being shared. We own to the center of it. So the current configuration as far as traffic is concerned is something that's an existing condition. We do have a traffic study saying it's really no impact, and the biggest reason is we're splitting off the Taco Bell and the KFC. So corporate decision was on that. It had nothing to do with us. We'd love to run them in both the same building. But the problem is they're not marrying to each other anymore. They have to split apart. So that's the whole purpose of this exercise. So the traffic that was coming into the Taco Bell KFC is now going to switch over to the other location. Now, the client did want to put a Taco Bell at this location, but again, I'm going to back up just a little bit. I wasn't here at the last meeting, and I missed that. I was sick at home. We had city approval coming into this with their recommendation. I fell flat on my face, was not prepared for any pushback or anything else. I figured we had city recommendation, so we came in here just not prepared. No sound studies, no traffic studies, nothing else done, just here it is, let's go. So that's my fault. Now, what I have done since then, you've seen the separations, you've seen the barrier walls, and then yesterday I did go around and talk to the surrounding commercial and also the two largest residents behind us. Fortunately for us, they were there. We drove by, the garage was open, knocked on the front door, said if you'd like to talk for however long you want. We're not hiding. We're trying to be a part of this community. This is one of the reasons that developer picked that piece of land right there. It's easier to operate two locations, keep them clean, keep them neat. We did get a little bit of concerning information about they'd like to see the drive-through be a little more efficient, but that's something I can take up with operations to make it function a little better. But he wants to be a part of this community. He likes this area. He likes everything that's happening. And again, so the traffic count, we're just shifting it. The driveway's existing, we're tying into it. Philip, I believe, is the gentleman that was just up here that's super confused. And I will let y'all know that yes, it's a KFC now. We tried to do Taco Bell with limited hours. They will not touch it. They said it won't work for them. So we're having to redesign the entire site, rebrand it, be about the same size, all the other good stuff. We'll keep all the setbacks the same, it's just the branding will be a KFC now. With that being said, one of the things Philip brought up that he was confused on, and I will correct it right now, and tie it to the drive-through. The drive-through will shut down at 10. It will shut down at 10. The inside will shut down at 9, and the drive-through will shut down at 10. It's for security reasons. We let everybody get out of the building first, let them come get their last bit of chicken, eat, gives them an hour, then they can go, they can shut down operations, and then they can all leave together. So the drive-through stays open just a little bit longer. It's also KFC. It's not Taco Bell. It's not the young guys coming late at night, was out doing the things that they do, or ladies, and wanting to go swing by and get a taco or a burrito. Different people coming into KFC. They're usually family-oriented, have the same hours as everybody else. They want to get home, they want to go to bed too. So the concessions of this developer, we're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars of difference to switch it at this stage. So, but he's listening. So y'all have done a good job. We hear you, we're listening, we're adjusting everything we can. And everybody's right. If we were to switch it, we will tell you that we have brokers looking right now for 2 restaurants. If you lay that site out differently, we can fit 2 restaurants in there. We have to squeeze it all the way down to the 30-foot mark, put parking, dumpsters, grease traps, all that stuff along the back end because you don't want that next to the restaurant. You can have that right on there. I mean, 30 feet's not, we're probably 30 feet. We're probably even a little further than 30 feet. But to make it work for a restaurant, I've got to get a lot more parking in there. The operations change differently. The no scrubbers, the odor problems, the other things that come with it. And some of the other complaints that we heard about was and this was from the firefighter. I didn't know this. I guess y'all have every once in a while homeless people on the streets that like to tuck behind the walls and sleep behind the walls. And he said that was a concern of his. I don't know how to fix that. I mean, we have an abatement wall or sound abatement wall that's in a median. So if someone wants to sleep behind that wall, they're sleeping in the street. It's the drive aisle for the fire department to get into the site. So hopefully that person's not sleeping there. It's probably not a good place for him to be. Talked about lights, trash, just the circulation of the project, the traffic. And again, everyone's talking about, on the traffic part, we're talking about illegal turns. We're not talking about following the rules and regulations or the laws that are out there. We got people just doing whatever they want. I can't stop that. I can't stop the homeless people. What we can do is we've designed something that I think fixes all of their concerns. Again, I want everyone to be aware, and I think that's why Phillips it's tossed a little bit on this and not sure which way to go, because we're 87 feet away from our concrete. We're 125, 135 feet away from the building, from the property, not his house, the property line. His fence is a 6-foot tall cinder block fence now. We even asked him when we were there, if we made your fence 8 feet, would you be happy? I even asked Cody, I said, can we do that? I said, is there an HOA or anything? He said, I'm not really sure there is. I think you can do that for him if you would like. We don't have any objection doing that. He's got a nice pool in his backyard. He's got a view. But if you're standing on his back porch and you're looking out, you have to get on your toes to see over. You won't see the cars. You might see the back of the building. And so that's why I said we could put a landscaping. It's already heavily landscaped. We're willing to help. And I don't know if this is the place to do it. I don't know if this is the place we can lock into those agreements, because again, this is for a drive-through. It's not for the actual site plan or the other things. This is just a variance to the zoning for it. But I can tell you that the owner wants to be a part of this. He's already reduced the hours. He's done all the things he can do. The owner and I will honor our word with Philip to make him happy. If that requires us to raise his fence a little higher, we'll do it. I don't have a problem with that. Just some of the stuff I can't fix. Some of it I just can't fix. So I'm here to answer questions you have. I mean, I think y'all hear the different, that's why I think we're coming in completely different. It's a 100% different operation. It's a totally different restaurant and what it's geared to. So if y'all have any questions for me, I can answer it.
Thank you, Mr. Cooler. We do have a few. You or someone else on your team may feel free to answer. First, Commissioner Schaefer.
Thank you, Chair. My question's for the applicant. A couple clarifying questions. One was, I was going to ask if the KFC and Taco Bell are splitting. So in theory, you answered that already, but it sounds like from a traffic study perspective, you're basically shifting the existing traffic and volume down 1,000 feet.
Correct.
And then your hours of operations, you just made a comment that said you'd shut down the drive-through at 10 p.m.
Yes, sir.
Is that 7 days a week, sir? Or would that be Monday through Thursday, or?
I don't know what they are currently. I think the existing restaurant is very similar to it. I mean, we would just keep the same things. I mean, we were looking at 24 hours, and so when they said 10-9, we can do that the full week if you like. That's not a problem.
Okay. Thanks for clarifying, because you said 10 p.m. and I just wanted to, days of the week. And then last question, the trees on the plan there, are those existing, or those, I think you said you were going to plant those trees?
We're going to have to plant trees.
And do you have a projected height of those trees, sir?
Not at this point in time. I mean, it's just whatever y'all's rules and regulations. We can do oversized trees. That's not a problem. But again, if the trees, it's going to be a new tree. If Philip doesn't like those trees, I'm willing to work with him. Do we put up a vine fence next to it? Do we get some landscaping and grow next to it? I'll work with him. It's his view to the back of the building. It's not mine. From an operational standpoint, it doesn't affect us. But the additional landscaping or buffers or fences or whatever they'd like to do, we'd be happy to help him.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Commissioner Fider.
I just want to be clear. So you've changed on us. So the KFC is now going to move to this new site.
Correct.
The Taco Bell is going to stay where it's
Correct.
at. Okay. So in the proposed stipulations, Commissioner Schaefer had touched on it, but he's a lot smarter. So you're proposing to close the inside of the restaurant Sunday at 9 p.m.
Correct.
The drive-through at 10 p.m. What about Friday and Saturday, where you are proposing?
I think those are the hours across the board. I mean, I haven't seen any other KFC operation any other way. When I talked to the franchise owner, he has over 200 of these KFCs. Mm-hmm. He says because it is family-oriented, they're not the munchie place. So it's not the late-night craving place. Usually the families are done by 9, 10 o'clock. There's nobody really coming through at that point. So he's not going to have any problem shutting it down at 9 on the inside and 10 at the outside.
So if we were to vote on this, and the revised stipulation would say interior restaurant hours would be 7 a.m. till 9 p.m., 7 days a week.
Yes,
And the
sir.
drive-through would be open 7 a.m. to 10 p.m.
And actually, they won't open up at 7. They don't offer a breakfast. So right now, I believe their hours are like at 10 a.m. If the day they come up with a great chicken sandwich with egg on
Would
it,
they
maybe.
be open to modifying that?
But we'll
Would
come
they be
back and
open to
modify.
what hours would the interior of the restaurant be?
10 to 9,
10 to 9?
10 a.m. to 9,
And then the drive-through would be
10 to
10 to
10.
10?
And again, and that's the whole purpose for the switch, because we couldn't get Taco Bell to come even close to that. And, you know, we listened to the firefighter saying he's coming home late at night. We've listened to the other residents saying, I got to get to bed. We hear you. We do. And then and like I said, the question, we've already told you, if we have to switch it to a regular restaurant, which is what everybody's saying, just know that it has to switch to where I'm 30 feet away from it. And I just don't know that that's what they want either. And just so y'all, and I mean, I think Cody pointed out correctly too, there's no planning and zoning for that. That just meets the guidelines. So we're pretty far away. This is one of our smallest sites, got it all tucked in there, and you can see the green belts that we have all the way around this thing. We are not maximizing this property. We didn't try to squeeze in a standalone restaurant. We didn't try to squeeze in anything else. We're just trying to make this work. Because like he said, we do own it. So if it's not this, then we're going to have to maximize it.
Commissioner Nelson?
Thank you, Chairman. Appreciate the new information and your willingness to work with the neighbors. That was a nice surprising turn of events there with limiting the hours. Question I had is, I'm not as familiar with, kind of a Taco Bell kid.
Okay.
Guy with munchies here. I'm not as familiar with KFC. Do you have outdoor dining there, or is it all inside of the building?
So believe it or not, there is a new prototype because of COVID that was just released to us, and we've just applied it to our first site in Nevada. And we'd probably want to try to apply it to here. And what it's geared for is a very small inside restaurant. On the front side, it has a outside restaurant. Then it has a pickup area for your Grub Hubs and your DoorDashes and those things, where all the staging is on the front part. So, you know, some of the residents, they're upset about the circulation and going back to the drive-through. We have purposely, because in other places they're using the drive-through as the Grub Hub and the food and the DoorDash. And I don't think any of these COVID things are going to disappear anytime soon. And I think it's just where things are heading, and that's why corporate sent us a new site plan and said, we want to incorporate this. And so all the staging is at the front part of the building for pickups, for those kind of things, outside dining in a very small, limited. But what they do have is they have 2 speakers necking down to 1 drive to get people in and out faster.
Okay.
But again, we can put sound abatement against those 2, just like we did here.
But you're talking about on the north side of the building is where this would be?
Correct.
Okay.
And so that staging is done that way on purpose, but it's just to get those guys pulling in, getting out of the way, getting their food, and being able to get out.
Oh, I understand. Okay, that makes sense.
And just to get them out of the operational part of it. But I mean, that's just, like I said, corporate sees it heading that way.
Okay, thank you for that.
Commissioner Waitman?
Good evening. So I just have one question.
Yes, ma'am.
And correct me if I'm wrong. I think that you mentioned that this owner has multiple locations, over 200 or so locations.
Yes, ma'am.
So has there been a study, or has there been some research on the rushes that an operation would have, a KFC would have? I did grow up eating KFC.
Right.
And I do know this is not a munchie place because it's a little bit more pricey, so you're not going to have 16-year-old kids running around, right? They're not going to be able to buy a $20 bucket or family fill-up or anything in that sort. But my question is, has there been a study to see when these dinner rushes kind of end? Because I heard there are complaints about traffic, but I do believe that around 7, 8 p.m., that should reduce the traffic, right? If you compare dinner
Right.
rushes and when usual orders come in, because there will be DoorDash.
Right.
And there possibly will be, I don't know, Postmates or anyone else you guys can partner up with, but that would be occasional orders, kind of past dinner time, and that would
Correct.
reduce the traffic that some of the neighbors are concerned with, correct?
Their peak hours are just like you would think. As soon as everybody's getting off work, they're swinging through the drive-through, getting the bucket, and going home.
Okay.
It's completely family oriented. But right now, they're doing it at the current location 4 blocks over. So we're just shifting it 1,000 feet. But yeah, our peak hours for KFC are between 5 and 7.
Okay, thank you. Thank you,
welcome.
Chairman.
Commissioners, any other questions? Thank you. I do have a couple other speaker request forms from the applicant. Do they still wish to speak? Thank you.
Thank you.
With that, I'll close the public hearing. I had a question for staff. It sounds like we could possibly have a revision to, what item are we on? I've lost my place. Can we add those hours to the approval, add it to the motion?
Chair, members of the commission, absolutely. Whoever makes the motion does have the ability to add conditions to that motion.
Okay.
Yep.
Commissioner Finer, do you have a comment?
I was prepared to make a
Oh,
motion if you're.
absolutely. If no other commissioners have any questions or comments, I'd be happy to receive a motion.
I would like to make a motion to approve zoning case Z97-108.2 with the following modifications to the stipulations. Item number 4 will state that the interior restaurant operations will be 10 a.m. to 9 p.m. 7 days a week, and the drive-through will be open from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. 7 days a week.
Mr. Chair, I would second Commissioner Feider's motion.
Thank you, commissioners. Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. We will move on to item 3R, Peoria Regional Hospital Stipulation Modification. Staff, please present your report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. The case before you this evening is a stipulation modification for the Peoria Regional Hospital. The original case is Z0804. This is A.2, signifying it is an amendment. The applicant this evening is Trevor Jones of Kimley Horn. They are making the request. Bear with me one moment here. Thank you. Location is located north and west of the northwest corner of Lake Pleasant Parkway and Yearling Road. For members of the commission, you probably know the site well. This is the location of the Peoria Medical Center that was recently demolished. The overall original zoning case and a part of the application this evening is 48.17 acres. The specific request is to modify 2 conditions of approval associated with that, number 8 and number 10, in that ordinance of 2008-11. And I'll get into that more in depth later in the presentation. But effectively, the request is to adjust the landscaping and trail installation, the timing of it. It does not remove the actual requirement. So as I noted, it's a stipulation modification, and when we review these type of requests, we do have a number of factors that staff reviews. The 3 that I want to point to is we review the dynamics and the reasons that actually prompted establishment of the original conditions. We also look at it for relevance to the current conditions, and then we look at that request with regards to health, safety, and other considerations. Those factors in this particular case have changed, which is why we are here this evening. The actual hospital site is 7.12 acres. It is shown in the yellow outline. The overall the Peoria Medical Regional Center site is what you see kind of in the red outline. So there are vacant parcels within. Originally, this was one owner. It is now multiple owners. So there is a vacant parcel to the north of the hospital site. There is also vacant parcels to the west in that area within itself. Kind of circling from a larger context standpoint, you see Stonebridge Ranch, the subdivision to the north of them. We have the Basis Primary School kind of south east of that one. Further heading south is the Lake Pleasant Town Center, and then we have some large family single lots to the west. So in looking at this request, we wanted to, again, take a step back and look at the entitlement history. So this property was annexed in 1990. Kind of fast forwarding, if you can actually remember, this was custom homes at one point in time. And then in 2008, the gentleman to my left, Mr. Hawkes, processed a rezone for a full-service acute hospital medical office and, in particular, roof-mounted helipad at the time. There was a subsequent amendment, a minor amendment in 2009, and that was just to clarify some of the items that were a part of the original case, in particular to clarify the requirements for the heliport and helipad. In 2010, site plans were approved and construction commenced. 2011, unfortunately, construction stopped. Bankruptcy ensued, and we had a steel structure there for 9+ years that everybody remembers well. So in 2018 and 2020, our ED department was tasked to go out and find a team to help fund, design, construct, and operate a regional hospital in concurrence with the original intent of the property. Here we, previously in 2020, and here we are today. A new group has purchased that land out of bankruptcy. The structure is demolished, and they are moving forward with plans. So that kind of brings us forward to the new development proposal. Medica Development, the team that ED is bringing forward to the table, has 40+ years of experience in healthcare facilities. They do have an operator, Quorum Health. They oversee 150 hospitals in 39 states. The current hospital model that is being proposed on site has approximately 2,000 square feet. There's 32 beds, 28 of those are medical, surgical, and patient rooms. There is an ER. There are 10 exam rooms and 2 trauma. There's on-site imaging, as you can see, and they estimate approximately 150 full-time employees. What I do want to point out to you is no rooftop heliport or helipad is designed into their plans, and I will speak to that more as to why that's important in a minute. These are the proposed elevations. The one that you see on the top is the west elevation that will be, if you can remember, it's the large lot residential. So you'll see it kind of to the west. The one on Lake Pleasant is the one on the bottom. That would be the east elevation. These are conceptual right now. Site plan application is forthcoming and moving forward in the process itself. What you see now is a conceptual site plan provided by the applicant to see how this particular site would work in relation to the surrounding area. Please note, north is to the right as what you're looking at. So Lake Pleasant Parkway is that southern road by the site. You have Basis immediately shown on the screen on the left. The reason why I wanted to point out this particular item to you is because of the circulation as part of the application moving forward. They do want to address traffic within the area, and I'll touch on that briefly later. However, this particular site would include a new signalization and changes to the queuing operations of Basis. And so they are looking at it from a regional standpoint and working with the surrounding community. From a historical review, this is one of the factors that staff uses when we're looking at the STIP mod. What you see on the graphic on the screen is the original phasing and the layout originally contemplated in 2008. As you will notice, there's 2 different phases, or excuse me, there's a phase 1 and a future phase. Remember, this was one owner at the time, and so collectively they had control of the land. And so with that, a couple things to point out. First, there was quite a bit of residential residents that came and provided commentary and concerns. However, there was an acknowledgement of that hospital need, but the concerns primarily, overwhelmingly, was the rooftop heliport and helipad. There was a noise study that was associated with it, and mitigation efforts were formed. That noise study generated conditions number 8 and 10, and as an attempt to mitigate the possible noise from that heliport and helipad, they suggested landscaping along the residential to the north and west of the PRMC site, along with providing a full trail connection in that wash corridor. It is kind of faint, but you see those areas in blue noted as phase 1. Kind of respectively, it is unclear what the actual tangible effects would be when you put in those improvements in terms of mitigating the noise of that heliport. However, those were the concerns, the mitigation measures that staff had on hand, and that's what we recommended and was approved. The other item in particular for this analysis that is important is the hospital model change. So as I noted in the staff report and touched on briefly a little bit ago, the actual development team and the operator, they do not offer heliport and helipad as part of their core services in their facilities. So the newer facilities do not have that as an option. Why is that important? Because the current design that we have before us that we are looking at on plans do not contemplate that. It's not being built within the structure itself. Should they want to choose to go through and have a heliport or helipad in the future, it requires significant changes to the building design to meet building code, fire code, and FAA regulations. So it's a significant structural challenge when you start putting those type of equipment on top of the roof. That is not contemplated in this design. That is not a core service of the medical team proposing the hospital. However, what the applicant has agreed to is they would like to retain and agree to the, keeping in the special use permit requirement in the conditions. That is retained in there. Why is that important? Should they wish to go forward with a heliport or helipad option, that provides us a public outreach process at that point in time based on the information that we have. We can do public outreach. We can also then talk about what the most appropriate mitigation measures are given what we have, because depending on the timing, again, conditions can change, and we want to choose the most appropriate mitigation efforts possible at that point in time. So again, although the landscaping and the trail improvement timing is adjusting, the requirement for the special use permit is retained within the conditions of approval. Ownership changes. One other, and this is more of a technical nature. Originally, we had one owner. Now we have multiple owners within the original PAD area. So if staff was to require the phase 1 trail, landscape and trail improvements as it is stipulated in there, what that requires is for this applicant to come to an agreement with other owners to get a temporary construction easement and then figure out how to create a maintenance plan to basically keep those improvements in place until such time as things would develop. Typically, when we ask for off-site requirements, it's limited to addressing health and safety concerns. For example, we will often ask for median modifications as part of traffic improvements, and that is to address levels of service or concerns with traffic turning movements into a particular site. That would be an example of a health and safety consideration and a change that we would make. It would be considered off the applicant's property or off-site. So we try to limit what we have for off-site improvements to things of those nature. So right now, the current landscaping and trail improvements that are required do not meet the impetus of that health and safety. It does not meet that nexus. And again, the underlying reason for that condition, requiring those conditions, is no longer there because the model for the hospital has changed. So there's no longer a heliport or helipad. So therefore, the original beginning, the reason why those conditions are in there is no longer applicable. So at this point, staff concurs with the applicant. The timing of the improvements should follow customary practice, which means that they will be installed just at the time that each adjacent parcel develops. And those modifications are shown in Exhibit 2 within your packet as a strike-through that you can see. There are no other modifications requested. So I touched on it briefly. One last thing I will do is go into a few traffic items, if you will. So again, the applicant is quite aware that the existing traffic volumes are a concern from the residents. They are asking that the internal collector road that was originally servicing all 48 acres, if you will, that alignment is going to be shifted to Remuda Drive. Why is that important? It would now, that future signal that would be proposed there would eliminate the need for Carencia residents to be making a U-turn to go up to Jomax, flipping a U-turn to go southbound on Lake Pleasant Parkway. So it is more efficient. Secondly, because of this change, there is coordination ongoing between the City Traffic Department, Peoria Police, BASIS, and the applicant to address operational needs once this change is made. And so we look forward to that particular item coming to fruition down the road, but coordination and collaboration continues at this point in time. In terms of public outreach, notice of hearing postcards were mailed within the required radius. A legal ad was published in the paper. At the time of the printing of the report, no support or opposition to the case was received. I did receive 2 calls asking for information, and I would note that residents of Stonebridge indicated they would be watching this evening, so the residents are interested to hear more. But the one lady did not have any, she only had questions. She did not indicate support or opposition, just noted that she was concerned with the heliport situation and appreciated the applicant trying to address the traffic within the area. Key findings and recommendations. So the requested modification is the minimum necessary for the development of the hospital. And these proposed modifications will result in the construction of improvements in a manner that is consistent with typical and customary practice. The actual use advances the general plan by bringing a targeted industry cluster to the location. And the proposal would fill an important public health resource void in the general area. So with that, I am asking for item 3R that Commission recommend approval of case Z08-04 8.2 to City Council, subject to the conditions of approval in Exhibit 3. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Deaver. Appreciate that. We have questions from Commissioner Schaefer.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Ms. Deaver, for that information. I do have a handful of questions here, clarifying questions. First and foremost, tonight, the ask of the Commission is under Condition 8 and 10, which is the pathway, right? And the way it stands now, for all the phases, or all the parcels would have to be completed in the first phase of the project, is that correct?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Schaefer, with the first phase, which was contemplated as the hospital site, the landscaping portion, let me get back to the map to assist. Oops, sorry, apologize. Mr. Goody, can you? The landscaping portion along the north and the west that was shown in blue, that would have needed to be installed simultaneously on the landscape piece. There was the trail in the wash corridor from start to finish that would also need to be put in from day one effectively when the hospital went in.
No, apologize, Ms. Deaver. So I'm looking at the map right now, and phase 1 goes all the way out past the future phase. So you're saying that as it stands today, the trail would go the entire, including the future phase, correct, all the way around?
Commissioner Schaefer, the trail is actually located in the wash, and so, I don't have the mouse. So from the hospital site, it runs kind of
North and south.
parallel? Yeah, that would be the trail.
And correct
location.
me if I'm wrong, Ms. Stever. So phase one, where the hospital site is, that sits today, now we have, originally it was one owner. Now we have multiple owners of these parcels. So the way I look at it, phase one is the facility where the hospital is being, and then the trail goes through the future phase. Is that another owner of the?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Schaefer, that is correct. That trail would be located on another property.
So in theory, the condition 8 and condition 10 are not applicable to the current owner of phase one where the facility sits. Is that correct?
That is correct, Commissioner. That is why it would be considered an off-site condition, being required of the applicant, having them to work with another owner in order to install improvements on their property and to maintain those improvements on their property.
So thank you. Thank you for clarifying that. So if the condition 8 and 10 was released from the owner of the facility phase one property, I assume it becomes a condition of the future phased applicant? Is that correct?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Schaefer, that is correct. So typical practice in development would be you would provide the improvements within your site. So as each parcel, as each owner brings forward a development, they would be responsible for installing the improvements on their site.
Ms. Stever, thank you so much for clarifying that. I do have some other questions. Talked about the owners of the parcels' traffic, and I saw that we're proposing to add a intersection there, I think across from Quarancia, the HOA development on the other side. Concerns with traffic? There's already a significant amount of lights and traffic there with the Basis High School and the Basis Charter School. There's a potential for problems. So if down the road, when you have a hospital and the eventually medical office buildings behind it in the future phases, you're going to have a lot of people showing up between 7 and 8 o'clock for high school drop-off, charter school drop-off, x-rays, labs, hospital appointments. So kind of concerned that they're on Lake Pleasant, and I completely agree with you. People going up to Joe Max and flipping a UE is dangerous. To the south, we have Yearling, and I know that the high school has access to that. Has there been any consideration or talk about maybe moving the Basis Charter School traffic through the high school and accessing Yearly to cut down on some of that traffic so there's less of a risk of hospital and patients pulling in and out of that intersection?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Schaefer, I'm going to queue it up, and then the gentleman all the way to the left, Mr. Lemke, I'd like to kind of assist in the conversation on this particular one. So as you see on the screen before you with the collector road and the signalization, if you remember in that site plan that I just had up from the original case, there is a collector that is contemplated to run through the rest of the site through the 27 acres. As that 27-acre piece develops, the collector road is envisioned to connect in and go to Yearling. In terms of the school traffic and the circulation, that's where I'm going to yield to the expertise of Mr. Lemke to provide additional information.
Good evening, Chair Alsop and Commissioners. For the new commissioners, I'm Chris Lemke. I'm the city traffic engineer. So the discussion on Basis, and they got two sites. They got the high school off Yearling, and then they got a primary school off Lake Pleasant Parkway, and it creates a lot of traffic. A lot of discussions with Basis to try to address the circulation. To your point, Commissioner, the plan is the extension of Remuda that's shown on the graphic right now, well, that's going to be a public roadway. And when the 27 acres develops, which is just to the west, remember north is going right, so this will be to the west, there's a wash crossing. We have to cross that wash with either a box culvert or a bridge. When the 27 acres comes in, they will be required to build that wash crossing, probably a box culvert, and that will go loop around all the way to Yearling. And so there will be a collector road from Yearling, crossing the wash to this new signal on Lake Pleasant Parkway. And the intent is to take some of the pressure from the high school that's all going to Yearling and bring them back to Lake Pleasant Parkway. The beauty of that rationale is the elementary school has different peak times than the high school. So we could stagger the way that the students come into the school. And we've already met with BASIS twice on this site plan, and we have a game plan for circulation for the elementary school. And if you guys aren't privy to the site, this BASIS location, when they go to school, ingress and also egress, the parents are not allowed to turn left at the median cut that's right there in front of the school because it backs up into Yearling. Yearling is not that far to the south. So all parents that go to the school have to go all the way up to Joe Max. It's about maybe a half mile, maybe not quite. Make a U-turn and come back. And why? And that's a lot of U-turns because the majority of the parents are coming from the south. South is where Happy Valley is. About 80% plus or minus is coming from the south. So 80% of the parents going to this BASIS site are going to Joe Max, making a U-turn and coming back down. Well, when we get new development occurring along Lake Pleasant Parkway, that's not a sustainable model to get people in and out of BASIS. What we're showing here, and we work with BASIS, we work with this development team, is at this traffic signal, you'll see we'll have dual lefts. They're about 700 feet long, each one, to pump traffic on that new collector road. That new collector road will have 2 receiving lanes, and we'll bring the BASIS traffic all the way to the top, and we'll turn 2 lanes into the BASIS site. That's the plan. We'll have to tweak it when the school year actually opens up, and we may have to allow a few U-turns if it gets really congested at this intersection, but that's a better intersection to allow U-turns than at Joe Max because there's a lot more traffic on Joe Max than it would be on this segment. Also, we'll have a peel-off lane that goes to the hospital. So the intent is BASIS traffic won't block the traffic going to the hospital. And so we've been working with that. And another thing that we try to do, because we're looking at the big picture in this area, is Corinthia. The residents of Corinthia has they're right in, right out only. There's no break in the median on Lake Pleasant Parkway. And so when you go home, if you live in that community, it's fine if you come from the south, Happy Valley. But say if you want to go back to Happy Valley, you have to make a right turn, go all the way up to Joe Max, make a U-turn, and go a mile south to get to Happy Valley where all the commercial activity is, Happy Valley and Lake Pleasant Parkway. And so this is a regional solution that helps BASIS, that helps Corinthia, and actually serves a hospital. And we leave a segment of road, a collector road, for future expansion across the wash to the west that will connect Yearling also in the future. So that's the plan, and that's what we're showing you today.
Thank you for that report. And I would agree that the 2 lefts there and the U-turns there is probably safer than going up to Joe Max because that could be pretty dangerous up there. One last, just clarifying question, Ms. Deaver. So if we release condition 8 and 10 from the parcel of the facility, then there would be no trail system currently on the current development. It would be future phases. Is that correct?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Schaefer, a portion of the trail will be built by the applicant as it falls on their property. Once it exits their property, that will then be picked up by the other owners as that property develops.
Okay, thank you, and thank you, Ms. Deaver. And I do want, and maybe this is for the applicant, Ms. Deaver, you said that the operator, Quorum Health, operates 150 hospitals in 39 states. On their website, actually says 22 hospitals in 13 states. So just clarifying.
Commissioner Schaefer, I will note that. I was using economic developments. I'm not sure what they were using as their number, but thank you. I will note that.
Thank you, Ms. Deaver. That's all, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Schaefer. Commissioner Fider, did you no longer have a comment? No. Commissioner Nelson?
Thank you. I'm not sure I'm clear on the helicopter discussion and how that fits into this. I apologize. Is that kind of an issue for another day, or is that connected to what we're going to be recommending today? I'm still not, a little fuzzy on that. I apologize.
Commissioner Alsop, Commissioner Nelson, Let me see if I can do the Cliff Notes version of it. Because a
Take
helicopter.
it down to kindergarten level, and you'll get it, I'll understand it.
I'm not sure I can get it down to a tweet, but we're going to see. Because the original model of the hospital had a helipad on the rooftop, that prompted staff to ask for a noise study, which recommended and we agreed with and asked for trees along the boundary of the property adjacent to the residence to be installed as that hospital was developed, because it was phase one. That's why those trees were required in phase one.
So the helipad was going to be ground level initially.
It was on the rooftop, Commissioner.
How are trees, okay.
And so, well, and that gets into, you know what, I'm going to ask the original planner for the case to.
I mean, so typically a
insert that
hospital
one.
start with a ground level and then they'll move it up to a tower or something like that. So that's why I'm getting a little, okay, go ahead. Oh, Chris. sorry.
Mr. Chair and Commissioners, you know, looking at the time label there, that was 13 years ago, but I still remember that case pretty vividly.
I worked for their competitor. I remember it well. And we go, what? They think they can make a hospital work out there?
Yes.
And here
so
we
the,
are.
So the reason for that buffer and trail condition, you know, that I recall, was there was a lot of interest from the neighbors to the west and north, the lower density neighbors to the north and west. And so this was seen as quite a change in intensity and a different type of land use. And at that time, the expansion of the hospital was projected to occur pretty shortly after the initial phase. It was going to be pretty much in tandem. And the request from the neighbors was that they wanted that separation from a new hospital campus that was going to occur pretty quickly in tandem from their neighborhood. And they thought, you know, with an expanded buffer would accomplish that. So that was the principal reason for that buffer. I think a secondary, maybe sound, but you're right. Trees don't attenuate sound, that's for sure. But it was mainly to separate the difference in uses and intensities from the beginning.
So at this stage, we don't know if the vision is to be a trauma center here where this helicopter conversation is going to come back. That's really for another day. At this point, we just need to focus on this path system, right?
So Commissioner Nelson, currently the plans that are being evaluated by staff do not include rooftop, heliport, helipad, anything of
None
that
of that's part of
nature.
the conversation.
That is
Okay.
not a core service that they provide. That is not envisioned. That's not what they're intending to do here.
Okay. But they're requesting, they want to keep the door cracked open in case that changes in the future. That's what that special
Commissioner
permit would be.
Nelson, staff asked for that to be retained
Staff
in
asked for
there
that.
in
Okay.
case something changes. Therefore, we have a public outreach process and a mechanism in place to address any mitigation measures that may be appropriate. And the applicant has agreed to that.
Okay, thank you for breaking that down. You're getting very good at helping this simpleton understand these complex things, so thank you.
Any other questions or comments, commissioners? Just a couple comments from me. My wife claims her address is Lake Pleasant Parkway, and so I hear complaints about Lake Pleasant Parkway every day, and this addresses almost all of them. So I love it. I live about a mile to the north. The basis problem is a problem, and one of my most heated commission meetings was about basis and driveways. So this is a big step forward in the correct direction to alleviate those. So I'm very excited to see that. Does the applicant wish to address the commission? Nope. In this case, I'll open up to the public. Do we have any public? Yes.
Thank you. I just have a few questions that I can direct here. I'm Dr. Greg Whalen, a pediatric dentist. My office is just south of Basis. Of the top 3 buildings at the top of the screen, I'm in the middle. I live in Peoria. I'm at 8223 West Hatfield Road. And we really are glad that someone's taken over that area and to build a building. And most of us in that whole area are very happy to see it. Like you just expressed, the traffic's always been a problem. We've tried working with Basis and pretty much have done a pretty good job. Even recently I said, wow, with COVID being out, traffic's been great. But a question that always came up, and especially where the location of where my practice is people would cut from Yearling into the west parking lot of Basis. And we were always told, well, the city let them do that as a right-of-way. So as much as I do like the idea of the intersection there, solving a lot of traffic problems, I do know that traffic's going to pick up again from my, right in front of my buildings, those three. Our big concern was, people are driving through there to get their kids to school for about, 20, 30 miles per hour. And I have a patient, van load of 3 children, pulling out. They can't see this car coming through, and we're really afraid of an accident. So we've done a lot of work, especially with the traffic, to try and do it. But I've noticed that you've said that you've talked to the houses around there and Basis. But I would ask the city traffic to also include Plaza del Lago in those discussions, because we have a different kind of viewpoint. It does solve some problems, but it really, through all what everyone's talked about, no one's mentioned the little white elephant there of Plaza del Lago. And we have a really vested interest of the flow of traffic going through there. And I think, so maybe just later you could meet with either me at my office or us about, we're just unclear about what the legality is of the flow of traffic through our, what we thought, private parking lot to the parking lot of Basis. So, but that's all I really want to say is just remember us. I know the people with the houses to the east and to the north and our new neighbors and Basis, but we also have a really vested interest in knowing the flow of traffic. So, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Matt Leach. I'm a member of the ownership entity of the hospital site. I just wanted to introduce myself and thank you for hearing our request. I appreciate it. If you have any questions for me, I'd be happy to answer, but I just wanted to say thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from the commission for the applicant? No, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, with that, I'll close the public meeting. Any other last questions or comments? If not, do we have a motion?
Chairman, I'd like to recommend approval. I'm going to make a motion to recommend approval of case Z08-04A.2 to City Council, subject to the attached conditions of approval in Exhibit 3.
Thank you, Commissioner Nelson. Do we have a second?
I second the motion.
Thank you. Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. We will proceed to call to the public for any non-agenda items. And we'll proceed to 4R, reports from staff.
All right, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, I'm going to switch gears and try to put my transit hat on. I'm going to be the advocate for our transit staff this evening. I just wanted to give you a heads up, and for those who are watching online, perhaps you've seen it, the transit folks are creating, if you will, a Peoria Transit Master Plan. So the process is underway. They're looking for feedback from residents and businesses right now. From a transit perspective, we don't have much in the way going north past Bell Road. And so this is a wonderful opportunity for folks to weigh in on how to improve access and mobility throughout the city. And there's various forms of how to do this on a multimodal approach. So it links up with execution of our general plan goals and policies as well. Tonight, unfortunately, they scheduled the first virtual meeting at the same time as commission. However, there is one coming up The next public meeting is March 9th at 3 p.m. There is an online survey that is available until March 12th. I have the website up. I do encourage all to participate. We do want a wide variety of folks to let us know what their thoughts are to help and shape, guide the transit within the city. So that would be the first item, Mr. Chair. The last item for reports from staff is the upcoming commission meetings. The next meeting is March 18th. It will be back in Chambers, regular time. One important note that I may ask Chris for a little bit of insight on. However, typically the City Council has budget study sessions. That is impacting our April 1st meeting. They typically go through the budget, if you can recall, pretty intent with staff. We would like to have everybody have the opportunity to view and look at those meetings. And so we're going to be canceling the April 1st, 2021 meeting. The next available after that would be April 15th. So we will be back on April 15th. So it was just a scheduling conflict at that point. And that would be it for reports from staff.
Thank you. Do we have any updates or current events from the commission? Nope. With that, I'll call this meeting adjourned.